Time now for Focus. There's a form of revolt by the French people against the political class. The words of François Fillon, the surprise winner of the Conservative presidential primary. Nicolas Sarkozy is out of the picture. François Hollande won't seek re-election. So what's going on? Mainstream politicians aren't listening to the people, says writer Alexandre Jardin, who wants to run for president. The elite are dividing up what should go to the people, says Marine Le Pen, France's far-right leader, who hailed Brexit and Donald Trump's victory. Jonathan Walsh and Josh Vardy report.
Politics. They adore the public sphere, but they're tired of politicians that don't want to come speak to them directly.
It's a presidential monarchy. The president decides if we're at peace or at war.
I propose to change the system from the bottom up.
26 million French people don't get out to vote anymore.
It's time for strong measures to bridge the gap that now exists between the elite and the people that are on their knees.
The political class is out of favour among voters. French people say they don't trust politicians anymore, and anger among them has been growing. So in the run-up to the 2017 presidential elections, many candidates have been riding the anti-establishment wave, when in fact they're a product of that very system. In this Parisian bistro, a revolution is underway, at least that's what its leader believes. French writer Alexandre Jardin is also running in the presidential elections. Tonight, he's using social media to put rural elected officials in the spotlight.
All through these past weeks, when we've seen political debates, there's nobody on set talking about the regions. It's not possible to bring the country back together if you don't go through the regions, by our local areas.
Managing social housing is not part of the politician's strategy. On the contrary, it's to ask themselves, what are we doing daily to change people's lives?
Alexandre aims to support citizen initiatives. These bottles of milk, for example, are sold above the wholesale market price to help producers, and they're already a big hit in many supermarkets.
It's helped farmers who were in deep financial difficulties to take control of their business, and now they've recovered.
Jardin wants to give back the power to locals, and what better way to carry their message than to become a candidate in the presidential elections?
Good people must revolt at some point. Up until now, all the revolts in France have been led by people driven by venom. Every party now offers up different content or different programs. They don't offer a different method. They say to you, have faith in us, we'll do it for you. But we want people to take action.
The elections are still months away, but to officially enter the race, Alexandre, the political newbie, needs the support of at least 500 local elected officials. The far-right National Front Party has overcome that problem. They're benefiting from the popular rejection of traditional parties. In Nice, these young activists are campaigning for the party. Cyril is a young activist. He says he appreciates party leader Marine Le Pen's clear-sightedness. To him, she's the only candidate who understands what people need.
She's the only woman in politics to have announced the Brexit victory and the victory of Trump. Meanwhile, the traditional right supported Hillary Clinton. It's the same for Fillon, Sarkozy and Juppé. It proves that there's a disconnection.
The political platform of the far-right National Front Party hasn't changed in the last couple of years, but the number of its followers continues to grow. Recent polls predict Marine Le Pen will make it to the second round of the 2017 presidential elections.
People call the National Front racist, but it's not racism, it's just a party like any other. Until now, France has tried all the parties from the left and the right. We've seen where we got to today, and I think trying this other party could be interesting.
The feeling that French politicians are disconnected and the belief that they're powerless or even contemptuous in the face of issues like unemployment appears to have driven a growing number of French people into the arms of the National Front.
You're fed up, you even feel downcast. Things are going less and less well, and on top of that, they tell you that your ideas aren't good and that what you think is not legitimate. This becomes unbearable. Underneath it all is the feeling of humiliation. It's simple. Half of all French people say they don't feel like their voices are heard in our democracy as it works today.
However, some politicians are willing to defend the idea of a political elite. Julien Aubert, a young MP from the Republicans Party of Vaucluse, takes this position. He's even written a provocative book on the subject.
77% of French people think that their MPs are corrupt. That's dangerous because it's like the pre-revolutionary era. They think they'd be better off with no elites.
Aubert says the system must be changed from within.
We really need a ruling class, what people commonly call the elite, to take decisions. These days, there's a problem with social mobility. For example, if the boss of an innovative company in the net economy were to help run an elite school, the future officials of the country might have to change their approach.
In the meantime, the gap is widening in French society, especially among young people. 1 out of 2 people eligible to vote in the 18 to 25 age group is likely to abstain in the first round of the presidential election.
Now I'm joined from the UK by Jim Shields, Professor of French Politics at Aston University. Hello, thank you very much indeed for joining us for today's Focus. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction to the report we just broadcast, François Fillon, after defying expectations by winning the first round of the Conservative primary, said French people are revolting against the political class. He also mentioned opinion polls because, of course, Alain Juppé was expected to win. But thing is, Fillon isn't exactly new to the political scene. He was Nicolas Sarkozy's prime minister. So how do you explain this, that he went on to win the second round?
Well, if we look back over the last 3 to 4 weeks, we have seen what I would call the most murderous period in French politics that I can remember, with the 2 biggest beasts on the centre-right, that's Sarkozy and Juppé, brought down, and with the biggest beast on the centre-left, François Hollande, equally brought down. So we are living in a very strange moment of rejection. But your question has a very good point. All of the people, or most of the people, who are claiming to stand for a new beginning have actually got long pasts. And Fillon is a classic example. His political career stretches right back to the 1980s. So there's a great deal of rhetorical illusion about promoting himself as a new man with new solutions. But he's not the only one doing it.
And we'll be talking about perhaps some of the others in a moment. Someone, though, who is relatively new to French politics is Emmanuel Macron. We saw him at the very start of the report. He, of course, left the government to set up a movement and is running for president, not as part, though, of the left-wing primary. What do you think are his chances and what do you put his popularity down to?
Well, he's being taken very seriously, not least in the Fillon camp. And you will know that a recent opinion poll of a few days ago, for the first time, showed Macron as the most popular politician in France, ahead of François Fillon. So he's beginning to look as though he poses a real threat, having seemed at the start to be a maverick outsider. What would we put his popularity down to? Well, a number of factors. One, he's young, he's energetic, he's telegenic, he's showing a lot of initiative in mobilizing his new movement. He hasn't served in government for long enough to be too tarnished by it, although there is an element of guilt by association. He was 2 years in the government, and it's hard to say he had nothing to do with the Hollande administration. But he has some foundation for a claim to be able to offer a new start.
Getting back now to someone who has been around, someone else who's been around for a while, who features heavily in our report, Marine Le Pen, the leader of the National Front. Now, there's been a lot of talk after Brexit and Trump about the next place that we'll see a surprise result being France. Do you think that she really will make it to the Elysee Palace?
Well, you're right. Trump's victory, like the Brexit vote, and also, of course, like the referendum defeat of Matteo Renzi in Italy, all contribute to this climate of what you could call electoral insurrection, the overthrow of established elites, from which Marine Le Pen is hoping to benefit. But the extent to which she can turn that into electoral gain is very unclear. Can she win the presidency in 2017? She can maybe win the first round, and there are plenty of polls that say she will, and it looks pretty certain that she'll qualify for the runoff. But the French presidential election system is very different from, say, the American, requiring the winning candidate to attract an absolute 50% plus majority of votes in the runoff. In France, Hillary Clinton would now be president, not Donald Trump. And the only way to win that majority of runoff votes in France is to build a grand coalition of second preference votes from supporters of candidates eliminated on the first round. Now, the FN's problem is its political isolation. That's the critical obstacle against being able to amass the kind of support between the two presidential rounds that Marine Le Pen would need. And the tendency towards a broad anti-Le Pen, anti-FN coalition in France still seems very strong.
She has managed, though, to make the party look far more acceptable, you might say, than her father Jean-Marie Le Pen did, though. I just wanted to ask you, though, do you agree with the humiliation analysis made by a consultant in our report, the idea that people feel their voices don't matter, and so that's what makes them more attracted to the extremes?
I think there's certainly something in that, but it's not new. I've been witnessing this all the way back to the 1980s, this rejection of established politicians, this feeling of an unbridgeable gulf between those elected to represent us and the people. So it isn't new, but it seems to be reaching something of a climax. It is certainly accelerating. It is certainly being amplified today.
Now, in the report, Emmanuel Macron says the French love politics. First of all, do you agree? And are the French in some way perhaps better educated, better informed than the Americans, for example, or the Brits?
Well, I wouldn't want to hazard such general comparisons, but it's certainly true to say that if we looked at the number and the quality of political debates that were served up by the centre-right primary, I think that was very impressive. These were long debates, they were detailed debates, they went into policy, and they really did give potential voters a choice between different candidates and different policy platforms. I think that's very important. So to that extent, it's certainly the case that the French are still politically literate, let's say.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Professor Jim Shields, joining us there from Aston University in the UK.